and welcome back to my channel. Long time no see, as they're saying. I know it's been a while since I posted in here, but the beginning of this summer was really busy for me because I had to finish my master's degree and I also had to defend my dissertation. That being said, I managed to successfully complete my studies, so that chapter of my life is done, which means that hopefully from now on I'll be able to be more productive on this YouTube channel. Coming back, I decided to tackle something more challenging as a piece of literature, but also challenging for me because it is quite easy to talk about books that let's say are not the best or they're not very complex and to pick them apart and say what's wrong with them. But I think it's infinitely more difficult to talk about a piece of literature that you really like and admire and give your thoughts on it in a well thought out manner. Like the title said, today I'm going to talk about Mann's novella Death in Venice. This particular edition is in Romanian and I read it in Romanian at first, but I also read it in English in order to write the script for this video. However, the Romanian edition is the only one I have, so this is what I'm going to show you. Death in Venice is a novella which takes place, like the title suggests, in Venice. It follows the main character called Gustav von Aschenbach, who is a famous, successful and esteemed writer, as he falls madly and deeply in love with a young Polish boy he meets while he's on holiday in Venice. Okay, let's see here. What's most fascinating about this novella is the main character, because everything revolves around him and his conflict, which is between two opposing views or ideas or sets of values. So Aschenbach, at the end of his life, finds himself struggling with an inner conflict between these two opposites that are in imbalance, and as much as he tries to regain control over his self, it is a losing battle, since he in the end gives in to his obsession for the young boy. Before we get into the meat of the video, the different interpretations and my personal interpretation of this particular novella, I'll start by saying that there will be spoilers, so I will talk about the end of the novella throughout the video, so you've been warned. However, I think that this is one of those pieces of literature that cannot really be spoiled, because even if you know what happens at the end, what is most interesting is how the character gets to that point. But in any case, if you don't want to be spoiled and you're curious, maybe read the novella first and then come back to this video. Without further ado, let's get into the analysis of Death in Venice. Let's start with a quick plot overview. We start by meeting our main character, the writer Gustav von Aschenbach. At the moment when we meet him for the first time, he's struggling with writing. So he's going through some sort of writer's block, which makes him decide that what he might need in order to overcome it is a change of scenery. So that's how he gets to Venice. In the hotel where he's staying, he sees Tadzio for the first time. Aschenbach is fascinated by the boy's beauty. The fascination, however, quickly grows deeper and stronger and develops into romantic feelings or obsession for the young boy. Despite all this, Aschenbach never tries to interact directly with the boy, but he always follows him around, looking at him from a distance and thinking about ways in which he could make this interaction between an old man and a young boy. While Aschenbach is busy following Tadzio around, there's an epidemic going on in Venice, which the authorities tried to conceal in order to keep the tourists in the city. Aschenbach, however, finds out from one man who works in the post office, and that man confirms the fact that there is an epidemic going on and the number of sick people is rising, and it would be best for him to just leave the city immediately. Despite this warning, Aschenbach continues to stay in Venice and continues to follow Tadzio around while he's struggling more and more to rationalize and to explain these feelings to himself. and ultimately he comes to die on the beach as he watches Taddeo going away in the sea. Like I've mentioned in the beginning, this novella is one of those literary works that are fertile ground for interpretations. And depending on how you choose to look at it, you can extract different meanings from it. Before I give you my personal interpretation, I'd like to talk about two interpretations that I've read while researching for this video and that I found quite interesting. The first one is that the novella and the development of the main character is a representation of someone dying and struggling to accept the fact that they are nearing the end of their life. There are multiple elements in the novella that do support this particular interpretation, starting from the very beginning. So when Aschenbach goes out on a walk after his work schedule in order to clear his mind, he sees a mysterious man that sits near a cemetery, and besides the cemetery he also sees unused funerary stones that are about to be used for future dead. It is also on this walk that Aschenbach decides to go to Venice, and we could look at this as him trying to run away from this uncomfortable thought that death is near. So instead of pondering on it and accepting it, he chooses to run away to another place, hoping to escape the reality of nearing his death. But obviously death is inescapable, and we have another encounter when he first gets to Venice that is also quite symbolic of someone being led towards the end of their lives, and that is the meeting he has with the mysterious gondolier. "You want to go to the Lido, but not with you. I'm rowing you well." "That is so," Aschenbach thought, and relaxed. "That is so. You are rowing well. Even if you do have designs on my cash and send me down to Pluto with a blow of your oar from behind, you will have rowed me well." So obviously we have here the mention of Pluto, which is the god of the underworld. So yes, Aschenbach tries to escape death by going to Venice, but as we can see in Venice, death follows him anyway. There's also the element of the epidemic. So as his obsession for Taddeo grows more and more, we have the epidemic that also starts to take over the city. And like Aschenbach struggles to repress his desires and his feelings for the boy, we see the authorities also struggling to repress the epidemic and to pretend that everything is fine. At some point, Aschenbach becomes aware of the epidemic, but instead of choosing to leave the city, he chooses to give into his obsession and to try to make himself younger in order to appear somewhat attractive for the young boy. He does that by going to a barber shop and letting him dye his hair and put on makeup in order to make him look younger. This is a very essential point for our main character, because when he first gets to Venice while on the ship, he sees another old man that also has his face painted, and he wears inappropriate clothes, he wears a lot of rings, and he's trying to make a fool of himself in order to gain the attention of a group of young people. At that point, Aschenbach looks at this person with judgment and with disdain, because he's not acting like a proper, respectable and old man should, only for him to ultimately do the same thing in this desperate attempt to regain his youth. But of course, death is inescapable, and in spite of all of his efforts, Aschenbach ultimately dies on the beach. Another interpretation and approach that many critics take with this novella, and that is quite popular, is looking at the inner conflict that plagues the character and finally leads to his death. This inner conflict between two opposing sides, one of which is being repressed and starts to resurface now that Aschenbach finds himself at the end of his life, could be seen through different lenses. On one hand, we could see them through the lens of the Apollonian and the Dionysian impulses, which are concepts taken from Nietzsche's philosophy. The Apollonian impulse, let's say, represents desire for perfection, objectivity, balance, while the Dionysian impulse represents the desire for pleasure and for chaos. Another approach we could take to this inner conflict is the psychoanalytical one. We could say that what we call the Apollonian impulse could be the superego, so the curated image of ourselves that we want to show the others, and what stands in opposition is the id, which are the repressed desire that surface through some kind of obsession, in Aschenbach's case with the obsession for Tadzio. Regardless of what approach one chooses to take with this conflict, the reality is that there is this dichotomy within Aschenbach's character and within his self that finds itself at an imbalance at the beginning of the novel. Regardless of what approach you want to take with this conflict, either seeing it to Nietzsche's philosophy or to the psychoanalytical one, what both have in common is that they look at Aschenbach through this dichotomy of two opposing sides that are, in the case of Aschenbach, are out of balance, because when we meet him first, we see him as this esteemed and very dignified writer, and we get the sense that he is repressing his more chaotic side, his id or his Dionysian impulse, while cultivating the other. And this is what creates the problem, because as he reaches old age, or he gets to some point where repression no longer works and his desires become so strong that they start to resurface. This dichotomy is present in everything Aschenbach does, starting from his origins. His forebears had been officers, magistrates, government functionaries, men who had led severe, steady lives serving their king, their state. A deeper strain of spirituality had been manifest in them once, in the person of a preacher. The preceding generation had brought a brisker, more sensuous blood into the family, to the author's mother, daughter of a Bohemian bandmaster. The traces of foreignness in his features came from her, a marriage of sober, painstaking conscientiousness with impulses of a darker, more fiery nature had had an artist as its result, and this particular artist. So we see that even when talking about his family, Mann creates this dichotomy between the male side, which represents the Apollonian or superego, to represent stability, and then we have the feminine side through his mother, who was the daughter of an artist, which represents instability, fluidity, sensuality. So from the very conception of Aschenbach, everything about his character revolves around this dichotomy between chaos and order, stability and instability, desire for objectivity and perfection, and also desire for worldly pleasure. The problem arises when, like I've mentioned, after years of repression, his Dionysian impulse, or his id, can no longer be repressed and starts to resurface. And we could see his writer's block as the very first sign of this imbalance starting to create problems for our character. Here is where we meet him on his walk as he's trying to find solutions in order to overcome this block that he's going through. We are also told about him that everything he achieved was through hard work and discipline. So even if his career is as an artist, so he took this from his mother's side, the way he approaches creation is very much taken from his father's side, meaning having strict hours, having a strict routine that helped him be creative and productive throughout his life. Aschenbach's problem when we meet him at the beginning of the novella is that he can no longer rely on this ascetic lifestyle in order to go on with his writing, so he finds himself in need of a change of scenery. The moment he thinks about his holiday also sheds light on how this repressed side starts to resurface. It was the desire for travel, nothing more. Although, to be sure, it had attacked him violently and was heightened to a passion, even to the point of a hallucination. His yearnings crystallized. His imagination, still in ferment from his hours of work, actually pictured all the marvels and terrors of a manifold world which it was suddenly struggling to conceive. He saw a landscape, a tropical swampland under a heavy, murky sky, damp, luxuriant, and enormous, a kind of prehistoric wilderness of islands, bogs, and arms of water, sluggish with mud. So we see him having this very vivid image of a faraway exotic land. And we're also told that he has this desire for travel that attacks him violently. Despite having this impulse, Aschenbach continues to rationalize it by viewing it as a normal part of a person's routine, something hygienic, as he calls it. So it has nothing to do with his innermost desires, but it is just what people do in summer. So he chooses to go to Venice because it's the closest place to him that also feels exotic. Once Tadzio comes in the picture, this rationalization of the desire starting to resurface becomes more and more difficult. With astonishment, Aschenbach noted that the boy was absolutely beautiful. His face, pale and reserved, framed with honey-colored hair, that straight sloping nose, the lovely mouth, the expression of sweet and godlike seriousness, recalled the Greek sculpture of the noblest period, and the complete purity of the form was accompanied by such a rare personal charm that, as he watched, he felt that he had never met with anything equally felicitous in nature or the plastic arts. From the very first time the writer sees Tadzio, he puts him above everything else he's ever seen. So he sees him as the most beautiful thing that he has ever encountered, either in nature or in the arts. Like he did with his urge to travel, he tries to do the same with his fascination for Tadzio. However, no matter how much he tries to separate his erotic desires from this intellectual fascination with beauty, as the story progresses, the line between the two becomes more and more blurred, and it is harder and harder for Aschenbach to justify his actions through this lens of a fascination in the face of pure beauty. In his desperate attempts, Aschenbach also tries to invoke Plato and the pederastic relationships between a young, inexperienced boy and a wise, older man who is teaching the boy. But again, no matter the approach he's trying to take in order to make something respectable out of his feelings for Tadzio, and out of his obsession he has, ultimately it is an obsession that doesn't lead to any kind of spiritual or artistic achievement. And it is this that Aschenbach struggles most with, because while he thinks that meeting Tadzio might be what determines him to write his capolavoro, let's say, or his magnum opus, it is nothing more than just an obsession he has with a young boy. No matter how idealized Aschenbach's feelings for Tadzio are, they are not devoid of erotic desires and ultimately far from the abstract world of ideas that Aschenbach aspires to. Like I quickly mentioned previously, in the end, he finds himself as the old man in the ship. Aschenbach rested comfortably, incapable of resistance, or rather his hopes aroused by what was taking place. In the glass he saw his brows arch more evenly and decisively. His eyes became longer. Their brilliance was heightened by a light touching up of the lids. A little lower, where the skin had been a leatherish brown, he saw a delicate crimson tint grow beneath a deft application of color. His lips, bloodless a little while past, became full and as red as raspberries. The furrows in the cheeks and about the mouth, the wrinkles of the eyes, disappeared beneath the lotions and cream. With a knocking of heart, he beheld a blossoming youth. So we see him in stark contrast to the Aschenbach we meet at the beginning. The latter one was this esteemed writer, an exemplary citizen that is respected by society and by his community. And here in the end we see him as a helpless old man who is trying to do everything in his power in order to attract the attention of the boy. So there's no more of that superiority he has over Tadzio that could be in any way similar to what we see in Plato's dialogue. He is just an old man in love trying to get the attention of a young boy. He's no longer judgmental of using such artifice in order to make your appearance younger, but he's happy to see himself in the new light and hopeful that he will finally get to interact with Tadzio. It is this new appearance at the end that symbolizes the complete takeover of the Dionysian over the Apollonian, because Aschenbach no longer cares about his appearance, he no longer cares about his status or how he's going to be perceived by others, and he also gives up the futile attempts at rationalizing his feelings and trying to transform them into something noble and respectable. He also no longer cares about the epidemic spreading throughout the city. His sole focus being getting Tadzio's attention. Going beyond these interpretations and looking at the novella through these different lenses, in my opinion, what I think this novella represents is an honest look at the condition of the artist. So far from being this idealized picture that people have in mind of a person dedicating themselves to the noble pursuit of beauty, Mann shows the artist in a human light, and how this pursuit of beauty is plagued by the undeniable, irrational and primitive human desires, which stand in opposition with the perfection, rationality and dignity that Aschenbach wants to emulate. In the end, regardless of how disciplined or good at writing Aschenbach was, he cannot escape the grip that the human desires have on him. And the thing about human desires is that they are unpredictable, impossible to ignore forever, and above all, they are undignified. That's why I think Aschenbach finds himself falling deeply in love with a young boy, because he has no way of rationalizing the deep attraction and the deep feelings he has for the young boy. Ultimately, in spite of how successful and how respected Aschenbach was as a writer throughout his life, he just dies on the beach, surrounded by strangers, and continuing to fantasize about the young boy. Before I wrap up my video, I feel like it is also relevant discussion to mention the 1971 adaptation of the novella directed by Italian director Luchino Visconti, and who launched the career of Swedish actor Björn Andersen, who played the role of Tadzio in the film and who came to be known as the most beautiful boy in the world right after the launch of the film. Björn's popularity resurged a little bit in 2021 because there was a documentary done about him and his story and his experience with gaining overnight success from and being known as the most and being the face of the most beautiful boy in the world. Much could be said about the exploitation of young actors who don't have adults around them to defend their well-being. But that's not a discussion I want to get in today. Where I think this ties back to what I've discussed so far is that the creation of this film and what came after for Andersen further shows that this process of pursuing beauty, of creating something that captures beauty, is by no means a dignified process that is devoid of excesses, chaos, or human desires. In the documentary, Visconti is shown saying that he attempted to capture absolute pure beauty with his film. Whether or not he manages to do that, that is a different discussion. But the point I'm trying to make is that the process of making the film and the aftermath, as far as Andersen was concerned, was far from being pure or noble or dignified in any way. His beauty, at the end of the day, was more akin to a commodity that was used in order to create this piece of media to gain success and fame. It was discarded once the boy grew up and he no longer had the features that people came to know him for. Now, another disturbing fact one learns from the documentary is that Björn's face was owned by Visconti for 3 years after the movie came out. So it was this image of pure beauty was very much used for things that aren't by no means pure or noble or dignified. In the end, Death in Venice is a complex novella which gives readers space for all sorts of different interpretations. In this video, I just wanted to show you some of the interpretations that I liked and also what I saw it as this honest look at how artists create and at the artistic process, and how there is no escape from this human element, and no matter how much we're trying to repress our deepest and darkest desires, they still resurface like they resurfaced in the case of Aschenbach. This was it for my analysis. I'll be honest, it was a bit difficult to talk about it just because I feel like you could read a whole life about philosophy and trying to interpret this novella. But then that's what makes it nice, since as you grow older and as you read more and more, you can come back to it and extract different meanings. I'll also leave in the comments links to the articles that I've read in preparation for this script. If you've read the novella, I'll be very interested in how you saw it and what do you think of the film. I didn't get the chance to discuss the difference between the film and the novella and whether or not it is a good adaptation, just because that wasn't the purpose of the video. But if you care to leave me your opinion about the novella or the film or both, I would love to read any kind of opinion in the comments. That being said, thank you for listening. This was my return to YouTube. Hopefully in the future I'll be able to post things on this channel more frequently. And I'm also opening an Instagram page. I'll try to post there pictures and maybe some shorts of things that I'm reading on the side. So if you'd like to see more of me there, I'd appreciate I'd appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye!